This podcast is a production of the Brickyard Network. To find out more about our lineup of ceramic podcasts, visit brickyardnetwork.org.
Hey, this is Erin with Cornell Studio Supply, located in the Gem City of Dayton, Ohio. As a proud sponsor of this episode and the Brickyard Network, we are happy to help you with all your pottery and ceramic sculpture needs by providing the best customer service and world-class workshops. Visit CornellStudioSupply.com for 20% off the largest ceramic book selection of all time. At Cornell Studio Supply, we are owned and operated for potters by potters.
Hola, it's Rose. I wanted to give you a quick update on what the Ceramic Materials Workshop team has been working on in the workshop. If you haven't heard yet, we started translating our popular online courses into other languages, starting with Spanish. Over the next year, all our courses will be available in Spanish, but right now you can jump right in and start with the middle glazes or self-guided crystal ball. To find out more, head on over to ceramicmaterialsworkshop.com. Hasta luego! We hope to see you soon!
Hello, my name is Kathy King, and welcome to the For Flux Sake podcast. I'm coming to you from the Harvard Ceramics program in our fair city, Allston, Massachusetts. I'm here with Rose and Matt Katz of the world-famous Ceramic Materials Workshop, and they are ready to answer your burning questions about clay and glaze. Hey there, Matt and Rose.
Hey, Kathy.
Hello, Kathy.
It has been a minute. It is so good to see you.
It has been a minute.
You know, such a long minute that I don't even remember who you people are.
Kathy, I don't even know you.
I don't know
Who
you.
are you?
Well, it did come up. I saw on Instagram you two did this really lovely reintroduction of who you are. And I was thinking, oh my goodness, we've been doing this for quite a good amount of time. And I wonder if we should reintroduce ourselves. Might be time. What do you think?
Not a bad idea. Who should start?
We had a funny interaction recently where it was very clear that people were fans of the show, but actually had no idea why we do the show.
We like it that way. No, wait, we don't.
No, we want people to be well informed and know why I have such loud opinions. I won't claim your opinions for either.
That's where I was going.
Man, why are you so obnoxious? Tell us the story.
Well, just proves you got the chops to back it up. So, do you want to just each of you give like a little bio and then talk about what you do the other gazillion hours of the day?
Well, everybody only cares about Rose, so Rose, you go first.
Yay.
No, not everybody cares about me.
You're the hero around here.
So I am Rose. I am the other half of Ceramic Materials Workshop, the one that's not very public facing, but I do all the hard work. Matt's just the talking head.
You're on the YouTube.
That is true. I do YouTube, so it's just a lot of work and a lot of fun too. But so I am a trained ceramic artist. I went to Alfred University. I have my bachelor's degree, and then I went into industry after school. So I worked as a production potter for a while. I worked in some craft galleries, and then I went into the tile industry. And I worked for two different tile companies. One was a wall tile, handmade artistic tile. And the second one that I went to work at was a large industrial machine-made floor tile, and we called it through body porcelain tile. And there's one left in the US. You guys can probably figure it out. We made little mosaics. We made 1x1s all the way up to a 2x2 hexagon and a 2x4 rectangle. So I did that for a bunch of years, raised 2 kids so far, few dogs.
So far, noting that.
I don't know if what we've done qualifies as raising them.
They're in the house. Yeah.
We supervised. And so it's Matt and I doing ceramic materials workshop. We have a crew in the lab, and we have some people who help us behind the scenes, and that's me.
But I will say, Rose is already underselling her skills, because what she did in these tile companies was profound. That in her first tile company, she was the glaze designer. So she would go and fix all the glazes in production, get the colors in line.
Colors, make new colors, fix old colors.
Adjust for materials, and do all that.
Yeah, all kinds of stuff. That was a fun one.
Well, and you did that and the clay bodies there, and then moved up. And again, she really is underselling herself, because she actually was the plant manager there. So she moved her way up to be the boss lady, which is why she's the better person I am, because she's got authority and responsibility.
And what's your story, Matt?
Oh, I'm just a humble country potter. Just
bullshit.
Oh, Rose is spicy today. My story. So I started in ceramics in high school, making pots. I grew up in Maine. It's an actual state, everybody. It's the last one on the East Coast. And then I went to Alfred for pots, for ceramic art. And I did my undergrad there. And where my story gets interesting is when I finished my undergraduate degree. For those of you who don't know Alfred, we talk about it a lot. It's also where Rose and I met and lived for almost 20 years. But Alfred is a really interesting place, because Alfred is known for their ceramic art school. And it's an amazing ceramic art school. It is an art school that ceramics is the central focus. Believe me, everyone else who's listening who didn't study ceramics is screaming like, painting matters. Yeah, okay. Well, it's a ceramic school. Yeah, we have a painting department. That's like a side hustle. And so, but the really cool thing is that there's a ceramic art school, and then there's a ceramic engineering school, which is all the science of ceramics. And it's, people think about the science of tile and dinnerware and all that, and there is that, but there is electroceramics and fiber optics and glass science and all bioceramics and just all these other departments, and whitewares, which is traditional ceramics. The science of what we do is just one area in that. So when I finished my undergraduate degree, a guy I mentioned on the show before, my mentor, Bill Carty, he wanted to start a ceramic engineering master's program for artists so that he could take people out of the art school and train them to do stuff like Rose ended up doing, of working in industry and developing glazes and clay bodies in production. And he asked me to be the guinea pig for this program. So I left art school and immediately went into ceramic engineering school.
Well, you graduated art school.
I graduated. I finished my degree. I didn't leave. I graduated. And then I went into the ceramic engineering program. Long story short, that program fell apart because of bureaucratic nightmares inside the engineering department. Nothing to do with the program or me, but it fell apart. And after that, Bill asked me to stay around and work in his research and consulting labs. So long story short, I ended up working for Bill for more than 10 years doing ceramic engineering research, consulting work, material design, analysis. And I did a lot of the dinnerware tile. We did a lot of electrical insulator work. That's also just porcelain and glazes. I ended up also working on crazy stuff. I developed glazes for body armor for the military. I worked on bioceramic projects, making bone grafts out of glass, and just all sorts of crazy stuff. And I spent more than 10 years in ceramic engineering and just doing research and study. And so I never ended up with the master's degree. That fell apart, but spending 11, 12 years in research pretty much gave me a full ceramic engineering education on the ground and doing consulting and being out there and doing all this. And then at the same time, I was teaching back in the art program at the art program in Alfred. So I taught glaze and clay body chemistry back in the art program. So I sort of kept my feet in both worlds. And then, anyway, long story of eventually Rose gets promoted to her second tile company, or she gets hired, I should say. And so we had to leave Alfred because she had a real job. And,
Yeah, I had the real job.
Yeah, I told you, she's the responsible one. She's the mature one. And so then we moved out of state for her job, and I was unable to keep teaching at Alfred, but they asked me if I could keep teaching my courses. And then we started teaching online to keep that going. And then that turned into what CMW is, where we just sort of spun it off and we're just like teaching clay and glazes online. But it does come from this amazing perspective that Rose and I have, because like we've been in the trenches. Like Rose said, she was a production potter. Like when I was an undergrad, I was all about wood firing and salt firing and throwing. Like I've been there. During that whole process, I did go to grad school, and I got my graduate degree is in ceramic sculpture, and I was doing 04 slip casting. So like we've literally done it all, and we'd sort of done the CMW thing to try to provide that balance between real hard ceramic science, and that's what's really important to us, but from an artist perspective. So to teach artists the way that they think and learn. And that's what we've been doing for years. So now it's the two of us. And as Rose says, we've got some people that help us, but we do our teaching online, and then we do consulting. Right now we've got a ton of consulting jobs that we're doing. We're developing glazes for a bunch of companies. We're developing a bunch of clay bodies right now for different applications and purposes. Yeah, a lot of clay bodies are coming through. And so we're sort of split 50-50 between those two things. And, it's a ton of fun. It's a weird life that we develop. And then we host a podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
In your spare time for fun.
Well, it was the funny thing of like, I started doing the online stuff because Rose had a real job and I was at home raising the kids with all this knowledge. And I'm like, all right, well, let's do something with it. So we did something with it.
And then the pandemic came, and you were Mr. Popularity.
Nobody saw that coming.
Right? How have you been doing this? How have you been doing this? That was wild.
COVID was really weird because we'd already been teaching online for 4
years
at that point. And, all of a sudden, everybody had a lot of free time and wanted to do stuff.
And everybody knew what Google was, Google Meetings.
Yeah, Google Hangouts and Zoom. And COVID was everybody's like, oh, you had such great vision with the online learning. I was literally just doing this because my kids are driving me crazy. I needed something that wasn't the kids. But that's us, Kathy.
Yeah. Well, I wish I had gone first, but okay.
Lay it on thick, Kathy.
Yep. Oh, no. We'll just do it briefly. So I grew up outside of Boston, Mass. And when I went to undergrad, I attended a school called Connecticut College, got into clay really late, then moved to New York City with a number of different bands. And while I was there,
Whoa. You are jumping around.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah.
But I didn't know you were in the band scene.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, I didn't play any instruments. We'll just leave it at that. But anyway.
Lugging gear. I gotcha.
Yeah.
So anyway, then while I was there, I worked at the 92nd Street Y studio and mixed all their glazes, many of which were titled Kathy's Mistake. And I learned a lot there because they had them in these like giant trash can sizes. It was bananas. So I got a crash course in, glaze mixing and working in a really busy studio there. And then I took 5 years between undergrad and grad. And then I went to University of Florida because I wanted to work with Linda Arbuckle. I thought I was a wood fire potter, and they had a wood kiln. And then I got there. I had artist George Bose was doing a sabbatical for Linda, pointed out that I'm not a humble brown potter. And what else do I do? So I talked about that I love printmaking and I love graphic novels and adult comics. And so that is how I got into doing Sgraffito. And then out of grad, I adjuncted a little bit, did the adjunct shuffle for maybe a year or two, and then went to Atlanta, Georgia, where I would ultimately be an associate professor at Georgia State University. And then in 2008 or 9, I came up to Boston again to be closer to my family. And I took the job here at Harvard Ceramics. And at first I was director of education. Then I, now run the whole enchilada. And that is it. I met my wife in 2012 doing a concentration at Penland. She's awesome. She's a blacksmith. And we live in Boston area still. So that's what I got.
Oh, That's
What?
what you got. That is a
Well,
rich
that's
history.
all.
That's the
is.
time we have, people. I'm looking at the timing.
We got as much time. I want to know more about grungy New York City.
Well, it's like we moved. I was dating people, a guy in a band, and we first moved to Philadelphia and was in that scene, and then moved to New York, and it was awesome. I mean, it's like you're young, you're in your 20s in New York City. I mean, what's more to say about that? It was awesome.
But see, those are the cool things that I never got to do because, like, I just so nerded out and was just like ceramics all the way that, like, I was a total music nerd back then, but I never got to chase those things around. So that's awesome. I'm jealous.
Well, I gotta be honest, like I was pretty hardcore too. It's like I had a secretary or a administrative assistant job during the day. I worked for a Japanese headhunting firm at Rockefeller Center, and I translated resumes that had already been translated. So it's like in Japan, the person would have had their resume translated, and then I go and I check that is that really correct or not. So that was an interesting job. And then, but then I would do that all day, and then I'd go to the studio at night and all weekend. So, I wasn't a very good groupie, that's for sure. I gotta be in groupie. Yes, because I'm like, I'm going home to go to sleep. So,
but those are the funny things. And I will say to everybody in the audience of like, we're sort of giving our histories real quick, but there are crazy things that all of us have that have led to our abilities to do what we do now in ceramics. That, definitely cherish those experiences. Not everything needs to be ceramics all the time because, there's so many things to learn. So that's awesome. And I don't think I knew you went to Connecticut College.
Yeah.
That was my second choice after Alfred.
Was it really?
It was going to be Alfred or Connecticut College.
Peter Liebert was my professor. He made us wedge clay 100 times. We had to make like 100 handles. I mean, it was very old school teaching. I don't think you could do it today, but it really was effective.
It is still a strong ceramics program. Our friend Denise Pelletier
Shout out
there. Great. And I was looking at ceramics, and it was literally Alfred or Connecticut College. And I have to shout out, not that he's listening, but my cousin runs the math department at Connecticut College.
Really? Okay. That's interesting.
This is the diversity of the Katz family of my cousin is a hardcore mathematics nerd. Hardcore.
So without much further ado, let us get to our questions, Matt and Rose. And our first one comes from Maria in North Carolina and has a question about a clay body in soda.
Hi, for Flux Sake team. I'm reading my own question, so Kathy doesn't have to.
Oh,
I recently finished building a soda kiln and have started firing to cone 10. As a listener of your podcast, I've become more interested, maybe obsessed, with choosing clay bodies that truly vitrify. As I move from cone 6 to 10, I'm finding that while many clays tend to have relatively lower absorption rates at 10, there's still many out there that are over 2 and 3%, and I'm concerned those are no-nos per Matt and Rose's recommended standards. Prior to Hurricane Helene, I was using a body with 1% or less. However, I'm now having to explore other options due to halted production from that clay supplier.
Oh.
I live in North Carolina and have many options for clay, both commercial and wild, but my for Flux Sake conscience is preventing me from even considering those with higher absorption rates. My question really has 3 parts. Is there anything that can be done to a clay body to lower the absorption rate? Am I being too restrictive in seeking such vitrified bodies in the first place? And as an aside, are the conditions of a soda kiln changing the level of vitrification of the clay any? Thanks for any guidance, Maria.
Wow, I can't believe. Well, yay, Maria, for, I'm anti-reading, so I really appreciate that. And now we know we have created something called a for Flux Sake conscience. So
yes, and standards apparently. Ooh.
It's my first conscience. I've never had one before.
That's true. About time, Matt.
Wow. So that was a stacked question. Lots of stuff to get to there.
Yeah, and I think as we just exposed all of our own histories with atmospheric fire, we all have
We
a history.
dabbled. Hmm.
Yeah, just dabbled. Actually, the last one is a fascinating question that I don't think I've ever been asked before.
Yeah, I'm not sure I've been asked that before.
What?
And
Which part?
and
Which part?
if soda firing affects
Oh, right. I
vitrification.
know. I was thinking about that too. We had a situation at the Harvard Ceramic Studio last semester where people were bringing me some of their soda-fired work in white stoneware, and water was coming through the bottoms of it. And I thought I was racking my brains around like, could this be soda specific? But then we found that the same body was doing that at cone 10 reduction. We ended up having
Right.
to readjust the recipe, and it's all good now. But
So let's go back. So should Maria be looking for a more vitrified body?
then 2 to 3%, probably that'd be nice. Yeah.
That would be nice, especially if you're making functional wear.
It is. And I know, and we sound like such like hardliners on this and sound so unmovable. And believe me, I see the number of people that will yell at us and say that our standards are unrealistic. And that's just not the way it should be. And that's not the way the world is, everybody. And let me tell you, that's some serious coping mechanisms y'all got.
It is, because if Lennox or any other large manufacturer sold that, they'd be in trouble.
Yep. And let's be clear, the FDA, which I know everybody can have their positions on government, and believe me, I say this and people are like, oh, we're going to trust the government. I don't trust politicians, but I trust scientists in the government. And they say that dinnerware must be non-absorbent. That is the word that they use. Okay, and that is in the FDA food code. I could pull up the reference if you want. And so, like, that's why we have these standards. And I can go down the whole thing, but let's be clear. If you're listening to this right now and your argument is, well, yeah, but that's just not realistic, get over yourself. Just move on. Because it is the way things actually work. And if you're trying to justify it, let's be clear. You were trying to justify a subpar product, and that's not where I want to be. And so yeah, that's why we have, the what was it, the CMW or the for Flux Sake conscience?
Yeah, for Flux Sake conscious.
Yeah. So plus one, Maria, for teaching me what a conscience is. So there's there's my growing moment for the day. The Going back to that last question, I'm like hung up on this one. This is
I know,
so
I really
fascinating.
don't know what to think of that. And I really want to talk to some soda firing people to kind of pick their brains about it if they've noticed a difference, and I want some samples to test.
I mean, in that case, the soda's taking the place of a glaze potentially on parts
Yeah,
of the
it
surface.
is.
And so, that's not going to make a big dent if the clay isn't vitrified, right?
Well, it depends.
Do you think it's a big effect though? It's probably moving. It could move it probably a little bit, but it's not going to take 2% and make it 0%.
Okay, so it's first of all, it's going to be literally a superficial reaction on the
It's going to
surface of
just
the
be
clay.
on the surface. Yeah. So interior stuff, it's not going to do anything to,
Right.
but
So the interior vitrification will still be off if the vitrification is off. But, one of the things that often will get asked to us is if you glaze a pot 100% of the surface, so no foot ring, and they'll do this industrially. There's a lot of dinnerware that's 100% glazed, and they fire it on posts. And then, they all have to grind off the postmarks, but it's 100% glazed. And people have asked me before if clay has to be vitrified if it's 100% glazed. And my answer is often no, actually. In that case, it doesn't. As long as the work isn't crazed, it could be porous as long as it's 100% glazed. And so it's the same thing of, would the soda interaction on the surface, because hot sodium interacts with silica and aluminum in the body to form a glass. That's what the soda salt firing thing is. And so it is creating a vitrified layer. Now, there's definitely variables. It doesn't do the interior, as Rose said.
yeah, it's not a consistent layer either.
Yeah, so it's going to depend on amount of soda, flame path, and all that. But then there's the other trick though, which is that soda pots are propped up on wadding. So like 90% of the foot is exposed to the sodium and the underside. I could see an argument that could be enough to seal the exterior and to call it good.
And then you have those little wadding weep spots.
You do have those. From a greater conceptual standpoint, I would actually say that could be okay. I'm not saying that it is, but definitely conceptually, like that could bypass the problem. But again, it's a lot of variables. It is not symmetrical, inconsistent coverage. It's got to have the right amount of sodium, yada, yada, yada. But like, I mean, yeah, that may not be bad. This is a good one, Maria.
Maria, you have to let us know what's happening in your new soda kiln.
I will say, to bum Maria out a little bit as to the question of what you can mix into your clay body. It wouldn't
be the podcast if it wasn't a bummer.
Matt the bummer. What you can wedge into your clay to make it better is your tears, as you, you can do. And hope that the salt of your tears helps to vitrify the clay.
And sweat. I mean,
because
you're wedging.
Absolutely. No, I would never say that it's a good idea to try to reintegrate a flux into a clay body. Why? Clay bodies, like one pound of clay, like 500 grams of clay in your hand, has billions is not a big enough number to say how many particles are in that clay. Trillions, quadrillions. There are in 1 pound. And one of the most important things when we're talking about clay is that those particles need to be homogenized. You need to have a kaolin particle next to a feldspar particle next to a quartz particle, evenly mixed. And you cannot reintegrate those particles into already mixed plastic clay in a way that's going to get them homogenized. And so you're going to have pockets, and that's a problem because ceramics, I was just writing something about this. Boy, I really want to drive home for everybody. Ceramics die because of unevenness. Okay, this is why ceramics always die. You built it unevenly, you dried it unevenly, you fired it unevenly, or you tried to mix something back in and it was uneven. It was non-homogenized, because when you have things that are non-homogenized, whether it's moisture or heat or particles, that creates asymmetric stress. So you get stress in one area and not the other, and like the clay will crack as a result of that. And that's a huge problem, much less it's a feldspar that you're going to need to wedge in. And that's just going to create pockets of glass, which can be their own problem if it's not homogeneously mixed. And I know, like, you sprinkle the powder on the clay and you wedge it and you see it all disappear. That does not mean it's mixed. We need to remember, we look at clay on the human scale, and this is existing on the particulate scale, microscopic. And if it's not homogeneous microscopically, it's just going to be a problem. So part of a good answer, Maria, you might be okay. Need to test it.
Did Maria say what temperature she's 10. Or what cone? Oh, she did.
Cone
okay.
10.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which I'm a little bit more shocked at, to finding the clays that are not that vitrified at cone 10. They certainly exist. I mean, they should, because, the whole thing that we probably have with cone 6 is like it's harder to get those bodies to vitrify. But at cone 10, it's pretty easy. I know there are some weirder bodies out there. And the loss of that supplier is a huge bummer. That's for sure. But I would keep hunting for a body that is vitrified, or, at least as good as you can. You want that number to be as low as possible.
Yeah. I feel for her, since high water is still not there, and that was such a major supplier in that area, so it can't be easy being able to just go get 5 different bodies to try out. But best of luck, Maria. Best of luck. Well, let's go on to our next question, which comes from Joshua from Tacoma, Washington, and Joshua has a question about calcining kaolin.
For Flux Sake, this is Joshua from Tacoma, Washington. My question is about calcining EPK. I fire to cone 5 with no bisque, single fire. And from my knowledge that I've learned in your class, I know that kaolin melts at like cone, 1 billion. So can I calcine EPK to cone 5? Is there some sintering or something that's going on that is going to negatively impact it as an ingredient in my glazes? Thank you so very much for doing the Lord's work here at For Flux Sake. Thanks a lot. Cheers.
Well, what do you think?
He once fires. That's pretty rare. You don't hear that very often.
No, you don't.
It's a risk, but it can pay off. If everything is dry, there's nothing wrong with a good once fire. But Joshua, Rose isn't the only one with a spicy mouth today, because Joshua said another S word that some of you may or may not know. He said sintering.
Let's all
It's
say
scintillating sintering talk, everybody, because that is the important detail. So to answer first, before I go on and on and on, no, don't do it.
We have hold on. Let's see. Time check. Matt's
Time
on a
check.
timer.
I feel attacked.
No. No one puts baby in a corner. I know. We know it. Just answer the question.
Come on.
Do not try to calcine your clay to cone 5. So sintering is a term that some of you may or may not know, but sintering is what is actually going on in the bisque firing. Okay. And that is a process where you are physically bonding the particles in your clay body together, even though you are not going through any relevant chemical change. And that's the really big deal. And that's why bisqueware doesn't have any shrinkage, because it's not going through chemical change where the particles are changing from the raw materials into glass and into mullite. They are just like being glued together chemically. Now, this is why some people will call bisquing going through the ceramic change. And just to be clear, that term, the ceramic change, means literally nothing and is what we call gobbledygook. Ceramics are just ceramics, like you're firing them. Are they permanent at that point? Yes, you can't unsinter something unless you've got geologic time or processes. But that's why you can't use your calcine. So when you're calcining kaolin, you're trying to drive off the chemically bound water. Okay, so kaolin is Al2O3, 2SiO2, 2H2O. Do I have that number memorized? Yes.
No.
Does that make me feel good? No,
Yes.
It does not. Well, okay, yes, it does, but it shouldn't. But that last part, 2H2O, is chemically bound water. So it's water that's part of the molecule. It's not liquid water. Well, that water molecule is why kaolin sticks together to make it into a clay body, or why we put it into a glaze to keep it suspended, to keep it floating. So the problem that we have is that kaolin, in and of itself, EPK in this case, Joshua said, has shrinkage. And nobody thinks about shrinkage in their glazes. Everyone's so concerned about shrinkage in your clay bodies, but kaolin in your glazes can make shrinkage in your glazes, which is why we tend to get defects like crawling. Crawling is actually a glaze shrinkage issue. So one of the ways we can get around it, you can calcine your kaolin. You can fire it up to a relatively low temperature, burn off the chemically bound water, so you eliminate the shrinkage from the raw material, but you keep all the chemistry, you keep all the silica and aluminum. And so that's why we will calcine our raw materials like kaolin. The problem is calcining should usually be about cone 015, really, really low temperatures, because at that temperature, you've knocked out the chemically bound water, but you haven't started to sinter. As you get closer to cone 04, that's when the materials will start to sinter and they will start to physically bond together. Well, if they're physically bonded together, they're not all those tiny little particles that you disperse throughout your glaze. We're just talking about how you need things to be homogeneous in your clay body. You need the same thing in your glaze. And if you sinter at too high of a temperature, although it looks like a fine powder to our eyes unaided, microscopically, they're all clumped together, and that's going to screw up your chemistry because not everything is going to melt consistently and evenly. And there, I'm done. Did I do it fast enough?
That was great.
That
You
was
did.
good.
Star sticker on your forehead, Matt. Good job.
Yes.
Because that is all the time we have for today's episode. So join us next time and see you later, Matt and Rose.
See you,
See you,
Kathy.
Kathy.
Well, folks, that's it for this week's episode of For Flux Sake. I'd like to thank the listeners who submitted questions this week. And if you want your question answered on the show, shoot us an email at ForFluxSakePodcast@gmail.com. So join us next time. And when in your studio, remember what Rose always says.
Always remember to test, test, test. This is a test of the emergency glaze system. Beep.